This is the PR Podcast, a show about how public relations helps you tell your story to the world. We talk with great PR practitioners who have the skills, creativity, and just plain savvy to get their clients noticed. Now here's your host, Jody Fisher.
Hey everyone, and welcome to the PR Podcast. I'm Jody Fisher. Thanks for joining us. This is a special edition of the PR Podcast, and one that I thought was really important, given what is happened and is happening in Ukraine, an unprovoked war started by Russia that has and is killing innocent people. We wanted to stop and appreciate what we as Americans largely, I think, take for granted in these situations. And that is the reporters and the photographers who are on the ground in war zones like Ukraine, bringing us the news coverage that we see every day. And it's the news coverage that we depend on to understand what is happening. You know, when we pick up the paper, we turn on the TV, we see a video on social media, whatever it is, whether it's bombs falling, whether it's firefights in the streets, or whether it's the people, the innocent people of Ukraine carrying their children and fleeing the violence. We have to remember that there are brave men and women of the press who are there on the ground doing their jobs to bring us the truth of what is happening. So I thought it would be best to turn to people I know who have done this. And we're going to sit down now with a good friend of mine who has been there and done that. And this is a serious episode, my friends. So let's begin. Stephanie Gaskell is a journalist with 25 years of experience covering war and veterans, politics, and policy. She's worked for the Associated Press, the New York Post, and the New York Daily News, where she has reported from Iraq, Afghanistan, Guantanamo, Haiti, Brussels, and the World Trade Center site after the terrorist attacks of 9/11. She was managing editor of Defense One, a division of Atlantic Media, editor of social media and digital development at Military Times, and she's covered the Pentagon for Politico. She also created and edited two popular websites, Warzone and The War Report. She is a longtime friend of mine and someone I hold dear. We are honored by her willingness to join us and talk about her experiences covering war today. Stephanie, welcome to the PR Podcast.
Thanks for having me. What a nice introduction.
Well, it's all true. And like I said, I hold you in high regard. You're a good friend, but you're also an exceptional journalist. You have covered the military and war for a lot of your career. What drew you to wanting to be a military reporter and put yourself into active war zones?
I mean, for real, it was 9/11. I think 9/11 changed a lot of journalists. I was 30 years old when 9/11 happened. I had just turned 30. Now, I grew up in a military family. I was born on a military base. My father was in the Air Force. Career. My grandfather fought in World War II. I don't know, it felt very, very, very normal. And so I always knew that I understood this part of like geopolitics, you know, like I majored in political science. I did not major in journalism. I never took a journalism class in my life, not one in college. I'm still really good friends with my college newspaper professor, so you know there's that. But I did poli-sci, and I thought that the world was a really interesting place. And of course I was in New York on 9/11, and that changed all of our lives. Jody, you know, that it changed your life, it changed my life, it changed everything. And I was working for the Associated Press down at Ground Zero. And I truly felt like that was the war at that time. Even though we were going in, like, you know, taking action in Afghanistan, which is where Osama bin Laden was. And we were, of course, searching for weapons of mass destruction in Iraq and all of that stuff that happened. But it was happening. And and here I was in New York City, you know, where everything kind of, you know, started all of this off. So I felt it in my heart for the longest time. I mean, I stood on that pile, you know, I covered firefighter funerals. All of my colleagues, we all were changed that day. I mean, we were covering like City Hall, you know, politics and budget and
And for
things like
people who are
that.
unfamiliar, City Hall is like
It's like two
spitting
blocks.
spitting
Yes. Yeah.
distance to what where
Yeah.
the
No,
World
I
Trade
was with
Center was
AP
and still
then.
is.
Yeah, I was not, I didn't go to City Hall until later to actually be in room 9. That was later. Because I was with AP, after the terrorist attack. And then I went to City Hall, and Greg Birnbaum hired me. But that was still also felt very much like there was so much going on, that had changed the world order. It changed DC, it changed a lot of all the stories we were covering. The 9/11 commission trials, things like that were going on. And it was wonderful. And I just, well, I just said it was wonderful, but it was a great place to be as a journalist. It was everything was going on there. And then you're looking at what was going on in Iraq, and I just kept saying, I want to go. And I'm not even sure I even knew that I could do it. In fact, I know I didn't know I could do it until I did it, but I don't know. I wanted to go. I really, really wanted to go. And I asked my editors a lot. I want to go. Let me go. Let's go. It's a big story. There's things going on. I'll go, even for a month, even for a week. And then Anna Nicole Smith died. And that was in early 07. And I remember just the resources they put on that story, which is not a criticism, because that's what a tabloid does. But I knew at that point that I wasn't going to go for the New York Post. I wasn't going to go. And so I just took what little money I had. I bought a helmet. I bought a flak jacket or Kevlar, and I bought a ticket to Kuwait, and I hooked up with the US military. I got an embed, and I don't know how I did it, but I did it, and I went.
But how did you, I mean, you tell the story so simply, like, I bought a ticket and I just went. And maybe that's very close to the truth, but I've got to believe, knowing how smart you are and how street savvy you are, you didn't just jump on a plane. I mean, did you contact somebody to say, I'm going over, you need to hook me up with somebody? How did that start?
It's like, you can't prepare someone. You can't tell someone what to do when you get there. It doesn't work that way. Like, I can tell you, like, here, you need a fixer. Here's how to get to the airport in Bagram. Here's someone who will help you. Here's what you need to bring. Even the military, as an embed, they would tell you what to bring, and half of it was whatever. But like, even Chris Hondros couldn't tell me what to do or how to be or how to, like, navigate. I could, you have to do it yourself.
Let's pause for a moment and pay tribute and talk about who Chris Hondros is and was.
Man. Yeah.
Chris was a good friend, who was a fantastic photographer, period, who spent a lot of time overseas in war zones, and was sadly killed while doing his job overseas.
In Libya.
He was in Libya.
Yeah. And he covered Africa a lot as well. A lot of people don't. And his work in Africa was incredible and Pulitzer nominated.
Who was Chris working for when he died?
Getty.
He's working for Getty Images. Okay.
Yeah,
and
Tim Hetherington. They were together when they both died. It was an RPG.
And if you want to know who Chris Hondros was, just Google him. Chris, Hondros.
Yeah.
You will see some of the most amazing photos you've ever seen in your life. And you have to recognize the way we started this conversation out, Stephanie, is that Chris put his life on the line and literally lost it, doing the job that he loved and bringing people the information that they needed to know about wars that were going on around the world. And
Chris covered New York a lot, Jody, as you well know. I mean, he did all kinds of assignments, just I was at City Hall, and he would show up for a press briefing, with the governor, the mayor, or the transportation secretary, or, he wasn't just, he was just a true journalist. Yeah. Anyway, yeah. But yeah, Hondros, I always call him Hondros.
Yeah.
Yeah, he gave me good advice. He definitely opened doors. And that's one thing you got to do is like, I've had other journalists ask me about opening doors for them, and I have done that. You can't just go there just blind with no, contacts. You just can't do that. I mean, you can't cover City Hall with no contacts. So therefore
Right.
you can't cover a
Right.
war with no contacts.
All right. But you show up there on
Yeah.
the airstrip.
I showed up in Kuwait and then took a convoy to Iraq. But again, this and I want to make clear to a lot of people, and I imagine your listeners will probably know something about this, but these were embeds. I was hooked up with a military unit. They it's not like they were in charge of me or responsible for me living or dying or anything, but they certainly gave me transport and areas to go and such, to like, here's a unit in Baghdad, you can go hang out with them for a few days. Here's a unit here, go. And then you have to really figure out, why are they sending you to these units and not others? And you have to kind of put your little thinking cap on of like what's going on, and where is the fight? And one of a hard lesson I learned covering war was that the fight was where people were dying. And so you get into a little bit of that. I hate to call it ambulance chasing, but it's true. You go where the troops are dying, because that's where the fight is, and that's where you want to be. And that was weird, but if you weren't there, there's no point being there.
That's very heavy stuff. And that's one of the
Yeah.
questions that I wanted to ask you is sort of preparing to do that. I mean, you talked about, buying Kevlar and getting a plane ticket, but there's also the physical or the emotional preparation that you need to do to get into that space and to stay healthy. Did you do anything to prepare physically or emotionally to go into a war zone?
Physically, for sure, completely. You cannot be stupid about this. I would run up the West Side Highway. I would try to do steps, like there's, especially for Afghanistan, and I was in good shape. You can't go there and, like you say, you don't ask me about emotionally, but physically, hell yes, you're gonna keep up with these guys. You want to keep up with these guys? If they're running and they're carrying 100 pounds of gear, and if you're not keeping up with them, they don't want you there. You're dead weight. I was in Iraq, and we were I was with 10th Mountain, and we were crossing this like swamp. So we go through it, and we have to like hold our gear up over our heads like we're in, like a movie. And I'm thinking, oh my God, this is crazy. And then we get up the top, sliding down all this mud and everything. And we all get up, and they all look at me, and they said, we just wanted to see if you could do it. I'm not kidding.
I believe it.
It's a true story. And then because we could have walked around. I didn't know that. But it was good. And then you know what? Then we were able to talk. There's like ice breaking like that. So that has to happen sometimes. So you talk about physical and mental, and oh yeah, and you're alone. As a journalist, unless you have like maybe a team of a couple of people. I was there by myself. So that was
right.
very difficult.
You're with those
I was just
people.
me.
You're embedded with a unit, but you're
they're not
still
my
alone
friend.
in the
Yeah.
job that you're doing,
Yeah.
right?
I did
mean, how does that
pictures,
affect you?
everything.
How does that affect you when you're doing that job?
Really hard. You feel at a lot of times, you're just like, who's telling me the truth? Who's not? Am I in the right place? It's hard to like, have someone to just talk through like what I'm doing. So you would, it's a mental issue. I mean, look, war is mental for everybody who's in it, for mothers, children, wives, husbands, kids, civilians, soldiers, everybody. It's not like you're ideal, like we're all doing let's have some yoga and a shake, and we'll have a good day.
So in that environment, is it possible to feel any form of safe or safety?
Yes, oh, for sure. For sure, especially when you're doing an embed. If you're embedded with US troops, I mean, I felt very, very safe. I mean, I was with the Marines, I was with the Army, excuse me, for sure. I mean, I'm not saying safe like nothing bad could happen, but um, there were a lot of service members who really, really respected what I was doing there and respected the fact that I was there and talked to me. And, a lot of it's off the record, which becomes difficult. But what I found is if you have enough off the record conversations, then you go and you take that on the record and you take that up the chain to the colonel, to the general, to whoever. And then you have a really legitimate thing to talk to them about. So I never, ever, I was always wanting to talk to the soldiers, even though I couldn't quote them. Do you know what I mean? I couldn't quote them. I couldn't write their names down. But the more they talked to me, the more they gave me what I needed to go and then go talk to the people who are in charge. And I think that's true on a lot of beats. I mean, you talk to the teachers. If you cover education, you talk to the cops if you're covering the police beat, right? There's a lot of things that really, really played a key role in me covering the fire department and 9/11 and working for Dave Seifman. I mean, my God, that guy taught me so much. Don't believe anything you hear. Nothing. The union boss is lying to you. And then you get over and you're in a war zone and you find yourself using that same logic. Like, why is this Iraqi sheikh lying to me?
And so that's the sort of one of the important questions is if you don't know which end is up, how do you go about doing your job, given that you're also operating in this sort of minute to minute environment?
You just do the best you can, and it's never going to be perfect. And that's what a lot of times makes me mad about people who think like every single thing should be reported. Why don't we know everything? Why don't you come over here and figure it out? There were days where I didn't know what was up or down or left or right. I didn't, it's hard. And so I really actually do get very, I take it personally when people want to criticize like war coverage, or they want to criticize like, why don't we know every single thing? And also, by the way, the military has no obligation to tell you everything they're doing. They really don't. I mean, you go into City Hall and you say, well, I pay my taxes, right? So I need to know where this money is being spent, right? The $50 billion New York City budget and where it's all going, right? We have a right to know that. And we certainly have a right to know what's happening with our military because we pay the same taxes. I get that. But then we can't sit there and expect them to tell us everything that they're doing. It's called war for a reason. It's hell. War is hell. And war is fog. You don't know. So it's, there are times when it just is like, I can't know everything. So you ask me, how do you cover this? I think that you look back at all these war reporters, and I feel like every single one of them has done the best they could with what they had at the time.
Well, and that's why I wanted to talk about this, because I feel like it's so important, because not only are these people putting their lives on the line as you did, but they're also operating under extremely adverse conditions where, as you explained, everybody's got, and we won't say that they're lying, but they're telling their version of the story that they want to tell. And so, and it's your job to sift through it all and figure out what's, as you put it, what's up, what's down, what's left, what's right. It's got to be incredibly challenging, because then you've also got to make sense of that. And then you've got to communicate back to your desk, wherever your desk is, to file your story. How do you make sense of that?
Well, I've always said, well, I haven't always said this. This is since I've gotten older. Journalism is not history. And I think a lot of people need to understand that. Journalism is not history. It is living and breathing. Journalism is a living, breathing thing that happens in our lives. And then we can all, write history and figure out what really happened and all that. But I think a lot of people want journalism to be history. And that is not true. That is not true.
Yeah, it's
At least
what happened today. It's not
right. It's
not
what
for
I know
all
right
time.
now. Yeah, like maybe there's 5 people dead in this burning building, but I don't know until they are done. But I'm going to report what I know, and then maybe there's only 2. And then does that make me a liar? There's part of me that really makes me angry about people's expectations of someone who's just going up to a burning building to figure out what's going on,
Well, and you hit the word there, people's expectations.
Yeah.
Because I do think that people who don't understand or appreciate what journalists do in any situation, whether it's a war reporter
and
or
PR people too.
as you put it,
PR people too. Yeah.
People have an unrealistic expectation of what the job is and what the maybe the wrong word, what the goal is, right? The goal is telling the thing today.
Or this hour.
Right now. What I know right now is the following.
My deadline is 5 p.m. Here's what I know. That's a hard world to live in sometimes. And then, my deadline is this, and here's what I know. And it's the best, here's what I've got.
How did you go about filing stories when you're out in the field? I mean, what both the mechanics of it, like, do you call on a satellite phone or and also the psychology of how do you put all this stuff together and get it back to the desk?
Yeah. Okay. That's really interesting because definitely a sat phone. In Iraq, I had a sat phone, and I was there as a freelancer. So I that was a lot of my costs of even just going over there. And people think I made tons of money, and I did not. I did not. No one makes money going to a war zone. So communicating the sat phone was super fun, but it would take like hours to get a signal. Sometimes you get it right away. And one of the things in my life, and remember, I haven't been in a war zone in quite some time. And so I do appreciate you talking to me, because I'm, this is in my review window. As much as I would love to go to Ukraine right now, I really would. There's a lot that in me that says, let's go, but I'm not. You learn this sense of patience that you would never knew you had. Just like you have to get that cell phone, that sat phone going, and you do it, and it has to face a certain way. It has to face like to the north, and then you have to do this and do that. And sometimes you're not with a unit that even has that capability. You've got to take notes even when you're tired. You have to transcribe. Transcribing when you're absolutely exhausted is so hard. And I learned when I was in Iraq for almost 6 months, I learned that I needed days off to transcribe, and even sometimes days off to just breathe, read a book, get my mind off of it. But then you call back to your editors, and these poor people, they're the same way. You know what I mean? They're like trying to get the paper out, and there's probably like a murder or whoever said what on Capitol Hill and what's the front page, and they've been in 3 meetings all day, and then you're calling from Iraq or Afghanistan. You're like, well, I've got this story, but I don't know. And then you don't know, and they don't know, and you know what I mean? Like, it's super disconnected. It was very difficult. There was one time when I did call and they put me on hold, and I was so angry. I was like, I'm calling from Afghanistan and you are putting me on hold. But you know what newsrooms are like. I'm sure that, You know what I mean?
I
Like,
know what newsrooms are like, but
yeah,
I still wouldn't put someone
I
from
know, but
Afghanistan
it
on
happened. It
hold.
happened. And I was just like, how dare you put me on hold? But then, they've got a whole paper to put out.
You're describing, and I'm fascinated and emotionally entwined in what you're telling me and telling us. What I'm hearing is that much of what goes on in the form of war reporting is not as simple as the story that is in front of your face, that there is an awful lot of deciphering what is happening around you. Am I getting that right?
Yeah. I mean, I I felt like I knew how to sell a story. What's the lead? What's the headline? What happened? Do you have photos? Who are your sources? It's like, what have you got? What have you got? And I remember my editors always saying, what you got? What you got? What you got? And I could tell some sort of great story because everything that I encountered there was so interesting, but it didn't mean that it was a story. I could tell you all kinds of interesting stories, but I felt like, if someone wasn't dying, they didn't want to hear about it. Or if it wasn't tragic or horrible or the worst thing ever. And I even had Marines tell me, you're being reckless, like you're now chasing the war and you can't do that. You need to like go home and take a break, like just breathe. And all I wanted to do was just like get that one story where like everybody died. And that is not a goal in life.
How long do you stay out in the field? I mean, how do you know when it's time to go home?
Okay. When you, as we talked about Chris Hondros, he was really, really angry with me for staying there for so long. He said, you can't do it. It's not, you can't do that. Now you're going to look at like World War I, World War II, and all these wars because the journalists were like there, but I could have left any day I wanted. I mean, Iraq, Afghanistan, fly out of Kuwait, fly out of Kabul. I mean, even now, if someone was going to Kyiv, that like you can figure out Poland and or whatever country, you can figure it out. And obviously back in the day, you would go to war and it would be a long, long time. But no, I could have left, and I remember Hondros telling me like, this is not healthy for you. But I wanted my story. I couldn't. You just and the soldiers will probably tell you the same thing too. You want the fight, right? That's why you're there.
As you watch what's going on in Ukraine, and you talked about how you have this kind of pull to want to be there yourself, what are you thinking about when you see the news coverage, knowing what those reporters and photographers need to be doing to be getting those stories? What's running through your mind?
Well,
I got to imagine you're putting yourself in their shoes.
I have friends over there right now. Yeah, for sure, of course. I've even I've had friends who, if you want the truth, I've had friends who have reached out to me, as a longtime journalist, um, for contacts for selling their stories because they're over there and it's hard. It's hard work, unless you're really with like AP, Reuters, doing something like that. If you go over there and you're with either a small outlet or you're a freelancer, it's super hard. So I have had a couple of friends like, say, give me your editor contacts, which of course I did immediately. Like, my friend is in Ukraine. Please hire this person. Please hire. Please take their work. Please take their photos, their words, their whatever. So I'm always happy to do that. But yeah, and then I'm sitting there and do I want to be there? Sure. But am I going to? No. Oh, it is such a weird, and my husband's a veteran, as you well know. My husband, and he did 2 tours in Afghanistan, and the two of us, have talked about this. There is, you know, there's different ways to live your life, but I gotta tell you, being in a war zone is something that will change your life forever. And then you look at these reporters and you look at how so much misinformation is out there, and this is not like Iraq and Afghanistan at all. There were embeds going on there, and I'm not defending embeds, because there was a lot of controversy about being embedded as a reporter. I'm not saying that that was like the best way to cover a war. And like Chris Hondros, can we say his name one more time? He was not always embedded when he was in Iraq and Afghanistan. He went with the locals, he got fixers, and he covered the war in a way that was like a lot of these guys do. I did not do that. I don't think I could have. But, this is like, urban warfare on the streets of Kyiv, and I can't imagine what it's like there right now. You just don't know if it's left, like I said, up, down, left, right. You just don't know. Are the shots coming from the north, from the sky, from, what are these weapons? What are they doing? I don't know. It's hard for us to figure it out.
I think we owe a huge debt of gratitude to reporters like you, Steph, and all the reporters and the photographers who are out there. Like we started off this conversation saying that, they put themselves at huge risk to cut through the fog, as you put it, to bring us information that we can rely on. And I feel that we owe them a huge debt of gratitude, and we owe one to you. So thank you for doing the job that you did. Thank you to your husband as well for his service.
He says hi. Yeah. Did you hear?
I did.
I told him to be quiet.
You cannot mistake that.
He's sitting here.
Baritone voice.
I did tell him to be quiet, but yeah, no. And look, this is why we do what we do, is because we want to tell stories, right? We want to witness history, and we want to tell stories, and we want to make a change in the world. Whether it's like I said earlier, like just covering a school board meeting and changing the course of your elementary school and figuring that out. That is important. Local journalism is important. And then you take it all the way to the other end with like a combat zone reporting. And that's important too. And I think the same skills really apply. And I think it's all very important. And I wish that we would all have a little more respect for not the pundits and not the people who are trying to, be left, right, whatever, just the actual people out on the streets. Remember when I used to come to the USS Intrepid and meet you, and we would tell stories about the Intrepid, and that was simple, but it was important. And so the importance of storytelling is really the message I want to get, no matter how you're doing it. And yes, these journalists, can I say one more thing? They deserve your clicks. They deserve your subscription. You must pay them. Stop acting like news is for free. It is not, and it makes me angry all the time. Support the guy or the girl that's in Ukraine right now, because they need to get paid.
Perfect place to end that conversation.
Yeah,
Stephanie, thank you.
Yeah,
news is not free. Every American should have at least one newspaper subscription. I don't care what it's to.
Yep.
Pay you want the information, you got to pay for it.
Yep.
And that's how you get good information.
Yep.
You pay people to do that job.
Yeah.
Steph, this has been a great conversation. Thank you so much.
Yeah,
if people are interested in your work, how can they find it online and click on it or pay for it?
I'm so semi-retired, Jody, you know that, but it's Stephanie Gaskell. I'm on Facebook. That's really where Facebook is really where I share my thoughts about the world. I try to keep my life separate from that, but Facebook, Stephanie Gaskell. Yeah.
Wonderful. Well, thanks again, Stephanie.
Thank you,
everyone. Thanks everyone for listening. Please remember to subscribe to the show and connect with us on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram at the PR Podcast. Send us a question or a comment. Our intro is by Christopher Appold. You can find him and his fantastic photography on Instagram at Christopher_APPOLDT. check him out there and hire him for all your photography needs. You can find me online at Jody Fisher on all the socials and on the web at jodyfisherpr.com. We'll see you next time on the PR Podcast.